Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Trail Network podcast. Today, I'm your host, Hillary Yang, and I'm so excited to be joined by Katie Asmuth and our guest today, Allie Ostrander. We dive into a really fun mix of topics, including Allie's new sponsor brand, Oiselle, how she balances her running career with being a content creator, how she juggles the trail and track worlds, and how she prioritizes her mental health in life and in sport. There's lots of good stuff in here today. We had a ton of fun chatting with Allie, and we hope you enjoy. Let's go.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Trail Network podcast. I am one of your hosts, Katie Asmuth, joined by
Hillary
Yang. And today we have a very fun guest. We're so happy to have on Allie Ostrander. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Also, I'm so impressed that you pronounced my last name correctly. That is a rare skill. So, yeah, round of applause.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Katie,
we are teammates, Allie. I'm not sure if you knew that, but I feel like we have a kindred spirit together. You have been working with David Roche, which is very cool. I want to dive into that. But generally, just really excited to have you on the show, especially after your most recent announcement running for a new company, Oiselle. So we want to congratulate you on the new sponsor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super, super excited. I think it'll be a really good fit for me. And I love the company, female-led. So I just think it'll be really cool. And it's also apparel only, so I can be polyamorous with shoes, as David would say, which is very appealing as well.
Okay, so now we need to know, what's on Allie's feet?
Well, right now, for easy runs, I'm switching between New Balance and Brooks. And for track workouts and road workouts, I wear Nikes. I don't know what shoes I'll wear on the trails yet. I haven't bought any trail shoes or tried anything out. I've heard good stuff about Adidas and Nike for the trails, but I don't know. We'll just have to see.
Polyamorous. Play around.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of love that. That's the best of all worlds, you can really tailor your shoes to each of the sports, and especially because you wear so many different hats, I only really run on the trails and I have no idea what I would wear for a track workout. So yeah. That's cool.
That's kind of what I was thinking because, if I was just doing roads or track, I feel like it's pretty easy to find a brand where I really like their road shoes. But I think it's a little bit harder to find a brand that does both really well. So it's exciting to be able to not be limited at all in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I want to dive into that a little bit. So you mentioned, Hillary, that Allie has a lot of hats. You have so many hats in the sense that you are spread between road and track and trail. You're a content creator, podcaster, also YouTube, big on YouTube, which is very exciting. Congratulations. But I'm curious where you love to spend your energy the most.
I think it really, really depends. It comes in waves. I feel like for everything that I do, there will be waves where I'm really, really enjoying YouTube. And then there will be waves where I'm over it. And then it's the same in running. There are times where I'm so gung-ho for trails and times where I'm just hankering for track or oh, I really want to explore the roads. Which is why I'm excited with Oiselle. I'm not obligated to do any one thing, so I can switch between everything whenever I want to. I think in the last year, I enjoyed track more than trails, but I was also doing a very specific type of trails where it was all pretty much Golden Trail Series, 20 to 30K races. And I think maybe if it had been a different kind of trails, I might have enjoyed it a little bit more. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but after track season, it wasn't appealing to me quite as much as a 3K steeplechase that's 9 minutes long.
Short and sweet. Seriously, Allie, I was out at Trail Fest last year when you ran, and those races are insanely painful looking. You're just redlining the entire time, and I would rather run 100 miles, but really slowly with lots of snack breaks than have to run that fast for like 2 hours. I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah, I know. It's always shocking to me how fast it goes out because when I think about it, I'm like, oh, we're running like 20 miles in the trails. We're probably going to be pretty chilled for like 10. But it's like, no, 1 mile in, you are zone 4. Now just hold this for a very long time.
Yeah, and like the level of competition is getting so insane, which is exciting. Like we haven't had that in trail. I know like that's in track, things are measured in milliseconds, but in trail it's measured in like minutes and like
Mhm.
sometimes hours in between like the top competitors, depending on the race. So it's like a very different type of competition, which is really cool. Your
Yeah.
headspace around that is probably like you can bring a lot of your track mentality in as far as just like not being freaked out by having people right on your heels. But like, is that something that you feel is a strength that you bring over?
Well, I like having people right around me when I race. I feel like if I'm alone by myself for long periods of time during a race, it starts to not feel like a race as much. And that probably is because my background is more track and cross country. Um, so I really like having a lot of people around, but it's not as fun when you're feeling bad and all the people around are just running right past you. That's
Yeah.
less fun. But yeah, I think maybe it's a strength coming from track, but I also think it's so hard to compare the two because a lot of what I experience on the trails is so different from anything I've ever experienced on the track. Like, obviously, any race you do is going to be really hard and you're going to have to work through a lot of like mental hurdles. But the trails are just a different beast. I personally think they're way harder, but I also don't know if that's just because I've done track more. So I'm better at knowing how to navigate it than I am in the trails where every race I'm going into, I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen. Like, I don't know. I could get fifth. I could get 45th. We will see.
Okay, I
Yeah,
have a
there's so
question
many
about this a
variables.
little bit because okay, you went to Boise State, ran really well there. Then you represented Brooks Beast. That's where you met Spencer, right? And then that
Mhm.
switch from Brooks Beast to Normal. I'm really curious about that because Normal is obviously a trail brand. Actually, I don't know. Do they have any
But they're
road
like so
shoes?
niche, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're very, very niche. It's road and like outdoor gear. So
Okay.
I think they don't want to go into like the road space at all. But if they were to go in a direction, I think it'd be more like mountaineering.
Okay. So that to me is an interesting.
Same, Katie.
I'm like, okay, so you went from Brooks Beast like track to running for Normal.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that time in Allie's life. Like, what was the decision to go run for a mountaineering brand? I mean, for Killian, for Normal, right? For a trail focused brand. I'm just very curious
Yeah.
about that transition. And then what has, transpired since that?
Yeah. So after I left Brooks, I was kind of like unsure of whether I was going to keep running competitively or like on the track. Not that I didn't want to, but I just didn't know if like that would be the direction my life went. So I kept like, I was also injured at the time. So I like came back from injury and was running and training and stuff and kind of doing some races on my own and was like, oh, I might want to like try to get another contract. But also maybe I'll like get a job or go to back to school or something like that. I didn't really know what I was doing. And my agent was like having me have some conversations with like brands, but I wasn't getting any offers. And I also was applying to jobs and wasn't getting any jobs either. So I was like, I don't really know what I'm gonna do. And this was like about a year after I had left Brooks, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just like start trying to like lean into social media and post more on both YouTube and Instagram. And like maybe I can make like kind of in a way like make my own brand so that no one has to sponsor me. I can kind of sponsor myself. Um, and then shortly after that, like maybe 4 months later, Normal reached out to me about like wanting to how, the brand was looking for like a US woman to represent them and someone that was going to do sub ultra trails. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds really appealing. I know I want to keep running, but like, I don't really have any other options right now. And like, I don't know if I want to do track or not, but I do want to like try out the trails because I grew up in Alaska and really love trails. So I ended up signing with them, but before I did, I was like very clear of I want to try out trails, but I'm also not like hard committing to only trails. Like I also think I'll probably want to do track when the time comes and like I'm drawn to it again. And I kind of figured that would be 2024 because it was an Olympic year. So in my first year with NNormal, I just did trails. And then last year I did like half the year pretty much was track. And then the second half, well, cross country and track. And then the second half was all trails. And it was like a really fun, amazing year. But like I said, I kind of gravitated a little bit more towards the track. And so I just kind of, at the end of the year, had a conversation with, well, halfway through the year, NNormal was like, Allie, you're not representing us well. Like you're only running on the track. Like we actually
like, it's a technical track.
Like, what were you wearing? I mean, you weren't wearing NNormal on the track.
Yeah. So I would wear NNormal, like my normal singlet, but Nike shoes, obviously. And they were like, we like actually kind of need you to like wear our shoes. Like, I was like, I get that. I will be doing trails soon. And then I did a whole trail season. And by the end of the trail season, we were like vibing and they were like, yeah, we really like this. I think you've been doing great.
I just forgot about that part of the contract. Don't mind that.
Well, let's focus on the second half of the year, guys. Like,
yeah. So, and like, obviously I told them this before the year started, like I'm going to do track this year. It's really important. And like, we knew that was happening, but I think like just halfway through the year, they're like, you got to do a race in our shoes, Allie. Like, it's just what you have to do here. But then after the trail season, like I said, they were like, yeah, you're doing a great job representing us. And we were kind of talking about plans for next year. And I just was like, I want to do trails next year, but I don't know if I want to do the Golden Trail series. It kind of like conflicts badly with track season this year. And I want to be able to like prioritize track over trails if needed. And just felt like probably there was a little bit of dissonance between like the brand's goals and my goals. And so that's why I decided to leave NNormal and like find a different sponsor. I personally like love NNormal, the brand, like the people, everyone I worked with. It was amazing. Like it's really, really a cool company and it's so small and new that I felt super connected to it. And like they were just amazing people, honestly. So it was sad to leave, but like obviously I still support the brand and like everything they do. However, I didn't feel like it was probably the best place for me to be like representing them if I'm going to be running track for 8 months of the year. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting, like as you're sort of going to Oiselle and like finding your place there, something that we've all been talking about internally a lot, and like I know a lot of people have been right now, is just contract negotiations and how you kind of find what you need from the brand, how you get them to meet you there, like just like how we like set this for ourselves when there's no real rules around it all and everybody's sort of in this place where you're just like, what do I need from them and what's going to be the right fit? So I don't know, like obviously whatever you're comfortable sharing, but just a little bit of insight into like how you kind of landed on the right fit with Oiselle and sort of what that looked like would be really, I think, interesting.
Yeah. So after Brooks, I couldn't get a contract through my agent. I stopped working with him. And so I got like my normal contract and Oiselle contract independently, which is cool because obviously agent fees are really expensive. If for anyone that doesn't know, it's usually 20% of not just your contract, but like any prize money or bonuses you get or appearance fees throughout the year. So it really adds up. It's nice to not have those, but it's also so hard to be your own agent in a way and like advocate for yourself and know your worth without feeling guilty about it, because like asking for money is so awkward in like every sense. So which is hard, but I do think that like now that I've been in this space for longer, I have a better idea of like what my worth is. And so I think it's easier to ask for it when you know like, okay, logistically other people at my level are getting this, so it's not outlandish to say these things. Um, but yeah, I mean, like talking with Oiselle was really good because right from the start, I felt like they really wanted to work with me. It wasn't like I'm trying to convince them that they should, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They were very into it from the start, which is always promising because I feel like I want a brand that believes in me and believes that I'm an asset to them instead of like, okay, fine, we'll pay you, I guess. So that was really good. And I have just really enjoyed it because I feel like they've been super straightforward with me with everything, which is nice. It didn't feel like we were playing chess or anything. It was just kind of like, we're just putting it all out here. This is the situation. So that was nice. And it's honestly been a pretty straightforward process. But I was proud of negotiating my own deal because I was like, I did it. I've done it. Yeah, always hard, always a little bit awkward, but yeah, it feels good to do, I guess. What do you guys have agents or do you negotiate on your own?
No agents here. I feel like it would be, I mean, I think both Katie and I have, I don't want to speak for you, Katie, but I've just certainly reached out to Kelly Newland and just like gotten her thoughts on things and really appreciate her insight as one of the few like female kind of agent types. And I know she's like very generously provided her thoughts to a lot of us, but yeah, it's such an interesting thing because it really is, it would be easier to have someone else that kind of stands out there and goes, I feel like like they deserve this. And you're like, yeah, that's right, I do. But when you have to be the one that like stands there and says that, that can just feel a little scarier. And I think especially for women with all of the imposter syndrome and all the other syndromes and things that we bring with us, you know, it's like all the syndromes. But it's hard. It's like, it's really, really hard. Like, I mean, I work for myself, like full time. I'm constantly pitching brands and trying to get them to believe in me and to like, you know, give me money to do something that I'm passionate about. And it's, yeah, I was just like resonating with what you said about finding a brand that believes in you and that wanted to work with you, and just thinking like, there's so many times where we try to make something fit that just isn't the right fit. And we think it's right for us, but like we really aren't listening to the other side of the room when we're trying to like shoehorn it in and just like will it into existence. And so, you know, like I feel like finding the brand that like is excited about you, not just like, oh, we ticked that box, we got however many women on our team. Like that's such a huge difference. That's really exciting. I'm really, really excited for you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm definitely stoked. And like in the negotiations, my sister was visiting and I was like responding to emails and I was like, what do you think I should say? And she like helped me and she's like, no, you should ask for more, Allie. Like you should. And I was like, I don't know. It feels greedy. I shouldn't do it. And she was like, no, you need to. And then I did and they like agreed. And I was like, oh my gosh. It's just really cool. Like you do have to advocate for yourself because like people are always gonna like try to like pitch as low as possible. And it's scary to like ask for more, but there's almost always more than what they originally offer. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's a wild world out there.
Yeah, I was just going to second on that with, or third on that, but having a thought partner is so helpful, whether it's your sister or Kelly Newland, or just leaning into other professional athletes that you know in the space and how much they're getting paid. I'm curious. I have a couple questions. So you probably spoke to other people besides Oiselle, I'm assuming. They weren't like the one brand.
Yes.
I'm sure you can't get into it, but that is also something that's of interest, right? Like I think you throw yourself out there to these brands that you're like, I think I would be a good fit for them. And you just kind of write the email and hope, cross your fingers. Or what was that process like, trying to find the company or the brand that you felt like you were a good fit for?
Yeah, I feel like I reached out to maybe like 4 brands, but honestly only got interest from 2, and kind of from the start, Oiselle seemed like the most, not only the one that I felt like was the most interested in me, but also I was kind of the most interested in them. So it just kind of worked out, I guess. It fell together nicely and pretty quickly where, yeah, like pretty much where my interest was also where interest was returned.
Isn't that beautiful? You manifested and it came to light. Okay, so Oiselle was the clear, easy fit, and that never happens. That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. I'm curious how much your content creation was of importance to them. If it was really like, I'm a professional athlete, I'm going to do both trail and track, and I'll wear your gear and I will be like a good representative for your brand, or was it also the content as well?
Yeah. Well, I think obviously it's always going to be both. I think most pro contracts now have some sort of like posting requirements. And mine definitely does, but it's not like it's not like it's not a content contract, you know. It is a pro running contract with like some content requirements. Obviously the lines are blurred there, but yeah, I can't deny that I think my value is higher because of my presence online. And I don't know if I would have been able to get a contract if I didn't have like YouTube and social media. I'd like to think I would, but you never know with those sorts of things. So yeah, I think the contract looks different because of my online presence. And that probably makes me more appealing to brands, but I wouldn't say it's like it's, you know, a contract just for me to represent them online. It's definitely like about representing them in races and at the professional level.
Yeah. I'm always curious.
It's such an interesting thing.
Do you have advice for other professional athletes that are in that situation where they're like, I'm performing really well, I want another brand to sponsor me, or I'm looking elsewhere? And it sounds like you're saying having your online presence has been a huge asset to you and has brought you a lot of fulfillment and joy. And is that something that you would recommend other athletes to sort of think about their personal brand as something maybe larger than they currently do?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, if anyone's looking for a contract, almost my first advice always is like post more, like put more of your training and your personality online. Like it is just kind of going to be important in the future. I feel like it's only getting more important to have some sort of an online presence. But that said, like it's not for everyone, and I generally like enjoy it. I like creating content. I like putting myself out there. It feels good for me. But for some people it's like super uncomfortable and they hate it. So like don't force it. It's not 100% a requirement. I just think it can make things easier. Especially in a sport like running where like you're not really going to get like famous unless you're like huge, you know. Like if you're a football player, you don't have to try on social media, like everyone knows who you are. Like running, you just have to try a little bit more, unfortunately. Yeah, so yeah, that would definitely be my advice. I think it's also like there are opportunities. Like I have an agent for social media stuff, whereas I don't have one for running, but like any deal I get on social media is through him. And so it's like almost like you can kind of double dip. Like you can be a runner and an influencer at the same time. There's no law that says you have to be one, which is nice because like, you know, you just have like an extra stream of income, which is pretty much just always helpful.
Thank you, Osprey, for sponsoring this episode of the show. Osprey packs are known for being durable, sustainable, and comfortable. I've been seeing a ton of Duro and Dyna trail running hydration packs on the trail, and I'm sure you have too. I also have to rave about my new favorite luggage, the Daylight Carry-On Travel Pack 44 liter. It is the biggest carry-on allowed on an airplane, and wow, have I been amazed at the amount of gear that this can carry. It's shocking. You can use it as a duffel or a backpack, which is super handy, and it has 2 stretch water bottle pockets, which I love. an open suitcase style with full zip opening. Honestly, it's the perfect travel bag for those on the go. The Daylight Carry-On Travel Pack 44 liter. Try it out at osprey.com or check on the Pack Finder link to find the perfect pack for you.
It's interesting. It's such a, like, I don't know if you read the piece that I think Molly Seidel wrote it for Outside Magazine, but like her sister is an influencer and she's the athlete, and just like her sister makes more than her, I think, like, and it is something, I love your approach where you're just like, okay, combining both worlds, because you do come from the like pro athlete performance side of things. And I think it's really easy to sort of look at people that come in through the influencer side and almost be frustrated that it's not as performance based. And sometimes you do get people that have huge platforms that aren't the athletes that are winning. And so it's like just such a changing landscape. And I mean, as someone like, I'm on the other side of the lens, and just like trying to find the stories that resonate can be really hard. But I think, yeah, it's cool that you're finding your way and that you found something where, like you said, you enjoy it, because if you don't, you're never going to stick with it, right? Like you can tell the people that are just like, oh, I'm going to try this thing, but like, their heart's not really in it.
Yeah.
And that shows very quickly, right? Like the authenticity, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not for everyone. And I also think like maybe it won't always be for me. Maybe someday if I like start a family or something, I'll want to have like a lot more of just like a private personal life. And maybe that at that point I won't post as much. I don't know. It's like evolving. But that's one thing that's nice about social media is like you can try it and like post a lot and see how it goes. And if you hate it, then you can just stop doing it. Like you don't have to keep going. I don't think it hurts to try, and it also doesn't have to be like what everyone else is doing or what I do. It can be so different. There's so many different niches and ways to do things, and there's no right way. So it is fun. I feel like, it's just a different world.
I'm curious too. You, Spencer Brown, your partner, you guys just started a podcast together. Congratulations. Do you want to give a little, like, why did you start talking about having a podcast with him? What is the goal in the podcast? And where should we find your podcast?
Yeah, well, so we haven't been super consistent lately. So we did like 12 episodes. And then since like Christmas holiday time, we got crazy busy and haven't posted in probably a month. So we're not off to a great consistent start. But
it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, I know. I feel like for us, the podcast is like kind of the last, like it's more of a back burner thing because like YouTube and running are really important to us. And then the podcast would come next. And we just started it because we were like, podcasting seems fun. You just kind of like yap for a while and you just post it, and that just seems nice. So we just decided to start one. And like honestly, it was fun and we enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I don't think we got super good about scheduling out a specific time. And then since we're both self-employed, our schedules don't always mesh, and it would just, yeah, it fell to the wayside for about a month now. But
are you going to bring it back, or you think you're going to end it for a little bit?
I think we're going to bring it back. Things are kind of calming down now. Yeah, so we're hoping to bring it back. It's like, honestly, it's not that much work. You guys is probably like a lot. You just probably do a lot better job than we do. But basically, we just like sit down and talk for an hour and then just post it. We don't even really edit it. So unless Georgie starts barking in the middle, in which case we edit out the barks. But like, so basically, it's a low effort production here. I'm not selling anyone on this podcast, but we have a good time with it. I feel like, it's just, if you're just on a run, you just turn it on. It's like you're just having a conversation. We want it to be pretty casual, but yeah, anyways, it's called Every Step of the Way, and it's on Apple and Spotify. So if anyone's looking for a new podcast, I didn't do a good job selling it, but it exists.
12 podcasts for you to listen to. Well, I think it's a great plug. And I do think it's fun to have, like, for sure, Megan and David are killing it with the Some Work I'll Play podcast. And I think it's really fun to have partners banter, like just to be on a run and hear two people kind of talk about their lives, especially when it comes to two pro athletes. So I think it's a great idea. I think it's really fun. I'm a fan every step of the way. People should listen to it. That's awesome. But I think it's really cool that Spencer and you are both, really involved and invested in content. And it's just, it's very fun because you guys you are together. And so it's fun to kind of watch that relationship play out real time. And it's fun for your fans to be able to watch that. So how much has Spencer influenced your desire to be online and to have that influence?
Yeah. Well, he was the first person that I ever knew personally that had a YouTube channel. And he's pretty much the reason that I decided to start YouTube, because we were dating at the time and I would see him, editing a video or posting a video, and he would kind of show me the behind the scenes, the analytics. And I was like, well, I have all this spare time, because at the time I was running for Brooks, and I was like, I have all this spare time and he's doing it. I might as well just start a channel, because he was also, it wasn't me being I'm doing it. He was like, you should start a channel, Allie. And I was kind of eventually just I don't really see any reason why not. I'm just bored watching you edit. I should just also edit. So he kind of taught me, showed me the ropes. I started my channel, and then I feel since then, pretty much, I've been posting on YouTube, although I did take kind of a couple long breaks where I was I gotta figure my life out here. But yeah, especially the last 2 years, I would say, I've really enjoyed YouTube and leaning into kind of the creative and storytelling side of things, and learning how to edit a lot better than I used to edit. So that's been really fun, especially because growing up, I never considered myself a creative person. I was way more academic and athletic, and anything that required art, I was just stay away from me. I don't want it. So to now kind of have found a creative outlet for myself that I actually enjoy and feel I'm pretty good at it. It's fun because I'm okay, so I'm not just not creative. I just don't like painting or drawing or anything that has to do with that area of art. Sculpture, none of it.
But it's cool. I mean, from the video side, first of all, there's not a lot of women that are creating content on YouTube still. So I think it's awesome that you are, and we need that. We need more of our female voices. Even with the podcast space too, it's just, again, a lot more dudes. We love the dudes, but we need more women in these spaces. So it's very, very cool that you've kind of developed that. And from an editing standpoint, I don't know, I kind of feel it's much more it suits the analytical brain, I love storytelling, but I can't draw worth shit. I'm stick figures all the way, right? And so finding what is your creative outlet and what is your creative voice is very cool when you find that fit. And also, just side note, having hobbies and things that aren't running and aren't activity based is really important, I think, having something that you can spend time
important. Other than editing and content and stuff, in the last year, I've been I gotta find some really good sedentary hobbies, because you just, I don't want to just if I'm not running or doing something active and outdoors, I don't just want to be on my phone,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I feel sedentary hobbies are they're great. I still am looking for more. Mainly for me, it's just reading and content. Reading is great though. It really is.
Reading books? What are you reading? Articles?
Yeah,
books. Okay.
Mainly romance, literary fiction, and fantasy. And also books are great socially too, because all my cousins read, my sister reads, my mom reads, and we can all talk about books. We can text about them. We can buddy read. So I feel I'm doing an ad read for books right now, but
I'm just a big fan. We all need to read more. That's our resolution for 2025.
No kidding. I know.
I have a stack of about 5 books that have my name on it that I have yet to tackle.
Same. That is high on the list for New Year's resolutions. Okay, something that we talk about on the Trail Network podcast, we've done this now for the last 2 episodes, I think, but we talked about something that we planned for the year of 2024 and how it actually turned out. And I'm just curious if you could lean into that a little bit about planning versus the reality of what happens and being flexible in the moment. I mean, just to say to our listeners, if you don't know, you won the 3,000 meter steeplechase at the Portland Track Festival in June in 2024. And you set a PR, and then you beat that PR by 3 seconds. And you were 7th at the 3,000 meter steeplechase in the Olympic trials. Pretty impressive. I mean, your year, clearly you wanted to spend more time on the track, but I'm just curious about your expectations for the year, how your January of 2024, Allie was thinking about how the year was going to go, and then how it actually played out. Because I think we all kind of struggle with that, having big dreams and motivation, and then having things change, or, oh, wow, life happens. So I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to your year in that way.
Yeah. Well, first off, my New Year's resolution almost every year is to drink more water. And
I see the giant Stanley, Allie.
I didn't do a good job. I never, but this year it's going to work because I got this really cute water bottle. And I think that's going to be the key for me. But anyways, as far as running goes, in January, I was like, okay, I really want to make the Olympic trials, try to make the Olympic team in the steeplechase. And then I want to do Golden Trail Series and place top 10 overall in the Golden Trail Series. And like through the year, I like qualified to the trials. I was super stoked about it. I had a really good altitude camp here in Boulder, then one Portland, like you said. And after that, I was like, okay, like I actually have a shot here. It's not big, but it's there to make the Olympic team. And that would be like absolutely amazing. And then like 3 days after Portland, I got COVID and was like pretty devastated by it, because at that point it was 10 days until the trials, and I was like, oh, like I had this little shot and I feel like this just took it away. But it ended up being like pretty mild, and then I was able to run the trials and, like you said, get a PR. But I like, and that's a thing with expectations that's just crazy, because like at the beginning of the year I would have been really happy just to know that like I had run a PR and made the finals. Like that would have been amazing. But then like in that situation, when I got 7th at the trials, I was like, oh, I really feel like I had more in me than this. And I wasn't like super stoked with it. I wasn't like, oh, I suck. I was just like, I feel like this didn't go as well as it could have. And which is crazy because like logistically that was such a good year for me. But yeah, just I think after Portland, I really felt like I could do something, and just didn't have like the dream day that I kind of wanted. And then after that, we decided to move to Boulder, and like after the trials, the next month was like just brutal mentally. I think having such a big goal for the first half of the year and being so focused on that, and like a lot of my decisions were like so driven by that goal, then to like no longer have that driving anything felt really weird and hard. And then like the move and all the stress and all of that transitioning to trails, it was like it just wasn't like a great time. I don't know. And then my first trail race at Sears and all went like really, really bad. Shockingly bad. But honestly, looking back, I should have expected it because I had been running trails for like 3 weeks. But but whatever, it went so bad. And then I was like, dang, okay, now basically my goal of top 10 in Golden Trail is like also gone, and I don't even know what I'm doing. Like why don't I just keep racing track? I suck at trails. Like it's so stupid for me to even be here. But then I was like, okay, maybe it's just one bad race. That could also be a possibility. And did the rest of the Golden Trail series, and it got better. But I think like honestly, it was really hard for me to follow anything up after the Olympic trials, because that was such like a high emotion time. And yeah, I don't know, it's just really weird to describe. I just feel like it was hard to feel as passionate about anything after that. especially in like a short time frame of trying to like move on, but still being like, you know, wishing things had gone differently while also being like proud of what I did. And I feel like I just kind of rambled about the entire year, but yeah, I didn't go quite how I envisioned. I feel like track went maybe a little better than I envisioned, and trails went maybe a little worse. But I was more upset about track than trails. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's not how I drew it up, but that's what happened.
It's like so hard to recognize the stress that like all the life things and the like emotional and mental side of training and racing takes, right? Like on paper, you look at your year and you look at your mileage and it's like, okay, yeah, like I can go do this. I can transition to the trail. Like, you know, like we just are not good, I feel like, at accepting and allowing for the life things that happen, and like just like recognizing like I'm not superwoman all the time. I can't just sort of like go full send and like power through everything and not have these things like take a toll, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that we like probably all of four of us like had in our reflections of just like, oh yeah, like maybe that's why I was exhausted and burnt out, or maybe that's why it was too much to try to fit this all in. But like in the moment, it's so hard not to just want to go full send and to like think that you can execute everything at that level, right?
Yeah. And I think also sometimes when there's like a mental or an emotional holdup of some sort, like it's not visual, it's not like an actual injury or something that's holding you back. And so you're kind of like, well, there's no reason for me to not be doing this right now, when there maybe is, but it's just not something you can see.
Totally. Yeah. And it's hard to talk about too, because it's like, if there's no tangible bone sticking out of your body, you're sort of like, you know, like, is this just like, I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll feel better? Or like, you know, where is
Yeah,
this at?
exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting that you jumped to trail. I mean, that was the plan. It sounds like you were going to do track and then you were going to go to trail, and you did that maybe as like, okay, this is a fresh start. Like, okay, now we're going to do something else. And I'm throwing myself into something else. I'm moving to Boulder. And then that first race didn't go well. I'm curious about what happened there when you're like, all right, that first race didn't go well. And then you said it came to your fruition, or you realized, okay, I am going to move on and keep going and keep trying with the Golden Trail Series. And you ended up having a great trail season. But that like pivot, being able to say, okay, I'm not going to just be done with trails, that I'm going to keep at it. How much of that came from just like a kind of apathetic, like, guess I'm on this road, I'm just going to keep on going and keep moving forward? Or was it intentional of like, all right, I'm going to start kind of trying to give this my all and trying to put some like passion into it again?
Yeah. I don't want to make it seem like I wasn't passionate about it. I feel like I was still trying really hard in my training and my races. I just think like the fire wasn't burning as bright for them, maybe. But I would say after Sears and all, the first race after that one was driven almost entirely by like apathy of like, well, it can't possibly get worse, so might as well just try. Yeah, and then after that race, when it went like a lot better, then I think it was easier to kind of be like, okay, like I could actually, you know, find some success here and feel good and strong, and like my fitness is actually translating. I just have to like give it time. And I think after that, like it got a little bit better. Which was definitely nice. And like I I had a lot of fun on the trails, but I still just feel like I'm frustrated because I don't think I quite put it together fully, and I don't know why not. It's probably just a matter of like enough time and experience on them, but yeah, I feel like I finish every trail race being like there are like 45 different things I could have done better. And I don't know how to do that, but I think that's also part of the appeal.
Yeah, I think if there's anything we know about you, it's that you play the long game, that you are here, like you are thinking about Allie now in the future. And I think that's really inspiring to a lot of people, because of a history of not always thinking about that future Allie, right? And so now you're
Mhm.
like, well, it's going to take some time. And so I think that's really refreshing to hear, because I think in our sport, in any sport, it's like we want results now because we're training for those results. And when it comes, in any sport, but it feels like, especially in trail, just because I'm biased, it does take time to be able to get to that sort of level. It's not just overnight success, but it's really interesting to see how you continue to work on that and translating your track background to trail. I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to your relationship with David Roach and how that relationship and training with David has enabled you to kind of been able to think about that long-term growth trajectory.
Yeah, and I think David also like has been such an inspiration with seeing like how successful he's been later in life and kind of seeing that like okay, like maybe this race went really horrible, but it's still a brick that I could potentially benefit from later on down the line. And that's something that it's helped to focus on when maybe results aren't what you want them to be, of being like it's still such a good training day. Like I'm putting in such a good effort and someday this could pay off. And like, maybe I'll have that breakthrough that you dream of. Um, but David, like from the moment I started working with him, was just so positive. Which, if you listen to their podcast, you probably think like, no way, there's anyone in the world that's this positive all the time and just like happy. But like that's actually how they are in real life, which is crazy because it really doesn't seem possible. But yeah, like everything he writes in the training log and like all the interactions I have with him, it's a bit like overwhelmingly like positive and uplifting, which is really nice to have from a coach. I'd never had that from a coach before and didn't really know it was something that I would even want. But now that I've gotten a little taste, I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I need. And he's also someone that's like not gonna write training for like instant results, like you said. It's more of like long term stacking bricks over time, like working on your speed and your aerobic base, and then like tweaking some of the training to like peak towards different things. But it's definitely a style of training that I've like felt changes from, but like it happened really slowly over time, like probably took like a year and a half. And it's exciting because I think the main thing with David is just that like his biggest thing for me is like staying really consistent and making sure that I'm able to like continue building off of whatever I do. And so like my training hours didn't go up with him or anything. And like honestly, I don't feel like intensity necessarily did either, but it's just like the way he formats it and how it like helps each thing is like a little stepping stone towards the next that I don't know, just over time it like built up and I felt like so fit from it, which was kind of shocking because I was kind of like blindly like I'm trusting the process, but like I don't know where this is going. And then to actually feel like a lot of benefits from it was it's cool. And David and Megan are just amazing. Like if anyone doesn't listen to their podcast, you definitely should. It's hilarious and very scientific. With like a lot of sexual innuendos as well.
The whole partner dynamic,
No, but it feels sustainable
Yeah,
is what it sounds like you're saying, right? Like the training feels sustainable, that you can continue it, that you continue to grow from it, which I think is just really refreshing to hear because it's not overnight success. And I think it's, I love that perspective on it. Hillary, did you want to dive into something else?
We jotted down a couple notes at the beginning, but something I wanted to like just get your thoughts on is just if you kind of step back and look at your career and time in sport, like you've sort of like grown up a lot as like who you are as an adult. I feel like I don't know. I didn't know anything about myself before 25, I probably still don't know anything about myself at 35, but I do feel like I know myself a lot better. Do you feel like you can kind of look at like who you are as a person and see how that influences who you are as an athlete now? And how do you set boundaries and really prioritize like your mental health and like staying healthy in a sport, but also like trying to like compete as hard as you can? It's a hard balance.
That's such a good point, that like you kind of grow up and like figure out who you are the longer you're in the sport. And it's crazy too, because like I'm 28, I just signed a contract. I'm really excited. I just ran a PR. Like I feel like my best years are ahead of me. But when I was coming out of college at 21, I was like, the next couple of years, it's the time. Like this is my prime. And like it's really like it doesn't, maybe for some people it is, but like it doesn't need to be. Like people can be successful so much later on. And I think like I have the biggest changes I feel like I've made is I try to, and I think I am like much more empathetic. I understand like different paths and different ways people might be and different things that people go through, and like the fact that I'll never know the full story for anyone else, and trying to like really be more understanding for like everyone that comes across my life, not just in sport too. And a lot of that comes from like when I was in a treatment center and just like meeting so many people there and hearing so many stories, and just kind of like gaining an understanding of like everyone struggles in like a different way, and a lot of it's invisible and you'll just never know. So I feel like that's been a big thing for me, and also just like gaining more confidence in myself and who I am, and being less afraid of like, like just talking to more people and getting to know more people. I feel like the sport can get lonely unless you're willing to like put yourself out there a little bit, especially when you're not on a team. And coming straight out of college, I was like, and even still, like, I wouldn't say that I'm shy, but I definitely err on like the introverted side. So sometimes it's hard for me to like spark up a conversation or be the first one to reach out, but I'm trying to get a lot better about that.
It's funny, like just on that point, the online personality, like sometimes it can be a lot easier to put things out online than it is actually in person. That's something I'm sort of cognizant of. But I do, yeah, I love your thoughts on just like evolving and having empathy for people. And I think learning as we get older that we're not the only ones that don't have our shit together, and that everyone else is also inside, like internally panicking and internally just like barely keeping it all going at points. I think it really does help give us grace for ourselves, which is, I think, a huge thing to learn as we get older. And also, it's just the more vulnerable we are with people, I think the more, like it just creates a more honest relationship. And I think you're really good at that. Like your online content, like that's what people have really responded to, is like you've been willing to be vulnerable. And that's really hard.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that. And what you said about like it sometimes being easier to like put things online, it's so interesting because I wouldn't want to say some things out loud like in person to like thousands of people, but then I'm so comfortable like posting it in a YouTube video. It's just really interesting the way that works, where like even someone watching one of my reels, if I hear them watching it, like I don't want to be in the same room, like I don't want to see what your reaction is to that, but like I'm willing for like everyone to see it. It's such an interesting dynamic. I don't really understand, but
yeah, totally. I've met people that I like really look up to online, and I still really look up to them, but they're so quiet in real life compared to their online personality. And sometimes you're like, oh my God, like I thought you just walked around all the time sharing everything. And it's like,
Sally McRae is not that way.
Yeah.
Sally McRae is still Sally McRae.
She is exactly who you see.
And totally.
And I don't think it's not that you're not the same person, but I think it's exhausting to be that way all the time, and you can't walk around just like constantly. It's like when you go to therapy, they're like, explore all your emotions here, and then we put them back in the box so that you can like walk around and function in your real life and not fall apart all the time. It's like this is what my therapist used to tell me. It's like, now we pack it all up again.
Syndromes and put them in the box.
Exactly. It all comes back to the syndromes.
We're done with the syndromes here. We are banning syndromes. Gone.
No more syndromes.
No more syndromes.
Oh man, more 2025 goals.
Box them all up.
Keep everything boxed up tight. Don't look at any of it.
Yeah, not till the next time. But it is interesting, right? Because I feel like running is a sport where we maybe have a lot of time to think and like just on that note, sometimes like where we let our brains go and when we do decide to unpack things and like when it's productive versus not, like
yeah. Like one time I was just starting to have, also Spencer just learned this term mentee B, which I've been aware of for years. Which
I've never heard it. You got it.
Short
Okay, what
for
does it
mental
mean?
breakdown. But it's like a cute way to call it a mental breakdown. A little mentee B happens to all of us. But
every Monday,
I like it. It makes it more lighthearted.
Yeah,
exactly.
Happy mental breakdown.
We have to joke our way through it. But anyways, one time I was just like, we were about to fall asleep, and I just started having a bit of a mentee B, and I think this is a very unproductive time for that to happen, like right before you fall asleep. But I was like,
you're the only one, Allie. Nobody else has ever done that in bed next to their partner.
I never.
I gotta just talk to Spencer about this right now, and so I just like rolled over, and I was like, what do you think happens when we die?
Oh my God.
It's like, Allie, why are you bringing this up right now? I'm not going to be able to sleep. And I was like, I couldn't think about it alone. And he's like, why did you drag me into this?
Oh, I am dying. Oh my God.
Oh man, that resonates way
so
too
true.
hard, Allie.
11 o'clock at night. It's always when we're like, let's just get real existential here.
Yeah, everything comes out of the box at 11.
It's gotta be a rule. No boxes after. Actually, my husband Billy, he does have like a note in his calendar every night at 9 o'clock. It goes off and it says worry time, and he gives himself 15 minutes to worry and to like write it all down. And it's really helped him because he would like struggle sometimes. And so, yeah. And so he gets mad at me. He's like, it's not worry time. You can't like unpack this all right now. Like you had your chance.
15 minutes in the whole day.
You get
and
15 minutes.
That's it. You box that up, Billy. And you just write it all down in that 15 minutes.
Go fast.
Yeah. Turns out men have syndromes too.
I wake up and it's like worry time, and then when I'm going to sleep, I'm supposed to put it away, but like don't always.
Right. Oh my God.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question for Allie. So I feel like we get this question a lot. At least I've gotten it a lot. Like, what would you tell your 10-year-old self, or like a previous part of Allie? I'm actually curious, and I've heard you answer that question before in other podcasts, but I'm curious about where you see Allie in 10, 15 years from now. Like, I'm curious about where you would want your legacy in the sport and how you want to continue to grow within the sport of running or content creating or not, or something completely different. I'm just curious of like, do you have visions? Do you have goals? Do you set those, goals and manifest them on paper, or do you think about them at all? Or are you just flexible and kind of go with the flow?
I wouldn't say I'm a flexible, go with the flow sort of person. But I definitely like have goals, and like I often write them down or talk about them with David, and like work my training towards them. But like non-running goals a lot of the time are more just in my head. And I think my biggest goal always is just, I want to be like, this is a very figurative sort of goal, but I want to be like a really good example for my younger self. I want to be someone that I could have looked up to when I was younger and like wanted to be when I grow up. So I think that that's like obviously not something that's super concrete. But I also think sometimes setting like super concrete life goals is a little bit hard because things are very fluid. But yeah, I think that's my biggest thing. Like in 10 years, I want to be like a good example for myself now. And I think for me, a lot of that would be like, continuing to like advocate for mental health in the sport, continuing to advocate for like taking care of yourself and prioritizing like your long-term health. And also just like making sure that you're having fun with it and like loving what you do and leaning into the things that you really enjoy about the sport, making sure that it's never a chore. So, and then obviously like athletic goals, like I hope that I'm really, really fast and that I like make the Olympics and stuff. But I feel like that's all kind of, everyone knows what those goals are going to be. If you're on the track, everyone wants to make the Olympics and everyone wants to run PRs and get better in whatever races they're doing. Like, yeah. So in 10 years, hopefully I'm like super fast, but like everyone knows that's what I would want.
I do feel like as women, like we have that advantage in that I think our 30s are like our prime time.
Late 30s.
I-
Late 30s
yeah,
is where
thank you,
that is
yes.
when you peak.
Yeah.
No,
And
you haven't
say,
peaked yet,
that's-
Katie.
Yeah. I need 10 more years
That's
to get
right.
there.
Exactly, because we're just smarter and we just get smarter and more efficient as we get older. But we were saying before you got on the podcast that, like, thank God we're not all like gymnasts and like done at 21, you know? So
Yeah,
it's like,
that
you
would be
know,
so rough.
yeah. So, and that's a good thing about trail running, Allie, is you just get longer with your races and you'll be
100
running
miler is
200
always
milers
there
by
for
the
you, Allie.
200 miles is there.
But
40s,
trust
that can be
me,
200s.
I'm thinking about that sometimes. I'm like, look, I don't know when the right time is to like level up to each event, but that is what I think about. I actually used to write this like it's not like a tier list, but it's like a tier structure of like where you go next after each event. And it's like, okay, track, and then you go to the trails, and then you like go up in distance. And then I think at some point I had something that you did after trail, like 100-mile, but I've forgotten it. So I'll have to get back to that. But yeah, it is exciting. Like in running, there's so many new avenues to go down. So I feel like you can stay in the sport for so long, which is great because like I'm obsessed. So
Well, and then you
We're
can
just
go the
getting
other
started.
way. Like the tier then goes up, because then once you're good at 100, then you're like, now I want to be fast again, right? And then so then you want to go back down to shorter stuff. So it's just can keep evolving.
I read that as it's
a
all
lifelong
downhill,
sport,
Katie.
which is back to the longevity game.
It's like, wait, we're just all going down.
Faster though, like faster while going down. That's what
That's
I meant.
true.
Yes,
That's true.
yes, getting faster all the time. Yeah, maybe like also I feel like when people are peaking is getting later, like the better technology and training and everything gets. So like maybe in 5-10 years from now, that peak will be even later. Maybe we can like all kind of ride that wave where like we can just peak for like 10 years straight.
Watch out, 50s. We're coming
I
for
kind
you.
of think it. Like if you look at the women that are still dominating in our sport, it's like there is sort of this wave of like, I don't know, it's later and later, and it's really, really cool. So maybe we are that rising tide that just keeps going. Like, watch me, I'm just gonna put the bar up there a little bit,
Yeah.
Oh, Allie, this has been so much fun. I just want to close out and just say if there's anything else you wanted to share with our listeners about kind of your progression in the sport, kind of where you're thinking the sport is headed, anything else you want to share?
I can't really think of anything. I do feel like though we covered a lot of like different stuff than I usually talk about on podcasts. So like props to you guys. These are fun new questions.
Just girl talk.
Yeah.
It's just like a sleepover.
That was our goal.
Well, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it. And everybody, we will put all of Allie's social information into our show notes, and please follow her
And her
along.
podcast.
Yeah,
Including the
this will
podcast.
motivate me to start posting again. I'll be like, Spence, they linked it. We have to make an episode.
It's gotta happen. It's okay. You guys, you have 12 episodes to catch up on. There'll be new ones by the time you're done.
I love it. Thanks again, Allie.
Thank you, Allie.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Trail Network podcast. We had so much fun chatting with Allie today. I don't know if you could tell, but we could have talked to her for hours. So make sure that you follow her on her different channels. She's got lots going on. We'll drop some of the links in the show notes. And then don't forget to leave us a comment on Spotify, give us a show rating. That really helps us. And then if you have anyone that you think we should have on the podcast, send us a note. Our Instagram is @thetrailnetworkpod. Until next time, I'm Hillary Yang, and I was joined today by Katie Asmuth and Allie Ostrander.